So we are the only living organism that pays bills. Just let that sink in. We are the only living organism that pays bills, and we're the only living organism that has a conscious mind, a thinking mind. So think about that for just a minute. So somebody at some point decided to create a system that disconnected us from who we truly are and made us start to trade time for money, and made money an external thing, not something of value, that the value that comes from you and your truth and your alignment. What they did is they created jobs, right? And so they're like, okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to create workers, we're going to create jobs, and what we're going to do is we're going to trade time for money.
Las distracciones y narrativas reinan este mundo tecnológico. Todos tienen una opinión de lo que es la verdad y lo que es mentira. ¿Quién controla el mundo? Los aliens son real. ¿Vivimos en un Matrix? Estas preguntas serán debatidas con José y Daniel G, explorando y descubriendo las verdades de nuestro mundo, nuestras creencias y nuestro reality. Welcome to Cultura Truth Project. Oh yeah, dímelo mi gente, welcome back. It's another one, like DJ Khaled, it's another one. Bienvenidos a Cultura Truth Project. Aquí con Jose G, Daniel G. What's up mi gente? What's up Danny?
Well, you know, I'm yeeting all over the place. I'm doing everything I gotta do. I'm team yeet all the way, baby. I don't have any, yeet gear, but this is the closest thing to yeet gear I got, because I'm about to yeet all over that booty. You know what I'm saying? But it is what it is.
Just in case the public doesn't know, what is a yeet?
You know what? I'm still trying to figure that out exactly. All I know is that one of my favorite pro wrestlers says it, and I now say it all the time. So I have been programmed.
Gotcha.
So whatever yeet means, I'm saying it. I'm saying it now.
I love it.
Bro, everything's good, man. You know, it's been a hectic week and a half for me, but thank God we're here. Thank God for another episode.
Amen.
Man, Texas and the pollen has been attacking my senses, so if I sound a little nasally, it's because Texas is trying to kill me. I'm trying to channel my inner Floridian right now, wearing some Miami Marlins gear, some Taino gear. Hopefully all that stuff really, surpasses the evil state of the pollen of Texas. So we'll move past that. Also want to give a huge shout out to Mexico. Mexico's coming in hot.
Órale, mi gente.
Órale, Mexico. Coming in hot. Viniendo duro en los podcast platforms. It could either be a VPN or a bunch of people in Mexico loving our stuff. So either way, it's going to be fun.
I love it. Well, saludo a la gente de Mexico. Mi gente, today we got a big show, another show with big guns as always. Today, we're going to be breaking down the truth of money, bro. We're going to be talking about the banking system. We're going to talk about the monetary system and how it's all connected to spirituality. And I brought on an expert today, John Vazquez, Coach JV.
Yeet.
Yeah.
Are we yeeting? We're going every time he drops a truth bomb, we're not gonna say preach. We're gonna say yeet.
All right. Hopefully we don't get a copyright for that. But we're gonna be bringing them on here in just a moment. But as always, mi gente, make sure you follow us on YouTube and on Rumble at Cultura Truth Project. Follow Gonzalez Media TV on Facebook, Instagram at Gonzalez Media TV, and subscribe to the podcast on all major platforms, on Spotify Podcast, Apple Podcast, iHeartRadio, Google Podcasts, and leave us a 5-star review. So let's go. Let's bring on the expert, the man, my brother from another mother. I love this guy. He's my mentor, one of my best friends. Let's bring on Coach JV, John Vazquez. Hey!
Yes. How we doing? Everybody?
Mr. Vazquez looking like a Viking. I love it.
I love it. Yeet. We got to figure out what that means.
You know what? There's an awesome thing called Google. What does yeet mean?
I know. I was like, I should look that up really quick. No,
John,
Love it.
welcome to the show, man. Appreciate
Thank
you
you.
taking some time for coming on here on
Of course.
Cultura Truth Project. I know you're a very busy man, and literally in the word busy, because you are running like 9 different companies. You are, one of the top influencers right now all over the place. So again, very, very grateful that you took some time to be on the show today on this small growing podcast. But again, very, very grateful. Thank you.
Hold on. Small
We
just
just
because the
started, bro.
numbers aren't there does not mean we're small. We are the definition of the sleeping giant. Wait until people find out. They're gonna be like, yo, I was on there since day one. Sorry,
Yes.
copyright issues again. Let me stop.
Yeet.
Yeet.
So,
I
John,
love
before we get started, where can the people find you on socials?
I think the best way, Google Coach JV, 3T Warrior Academy. Boom, right there. You'll Coach JV _ and I'll be there. Somebody has the Coach JV name, man. I tried to buy it from the guy. He wouldn't give it to me, but
Man,
you're out there, I'll buy it.
Coach, man, you know a couple of Puerto Ricans now that'll do something weird for $20. Just let us know where he is, and we'll figure it out. You know what I'm saying? I mean, I'm wink. You know what I'm saying? We'll figure it out. We'll do it for $20. We got a couple cousins that are willing to get their hands dirty for $20.
There you go.
So
Yeah, they all live on the island. And so JV, you're a former banker. You're a former executive in the banking system. You're also a former bodybuilder. You're a current entrepreneur, mindset, business coach. Tell the audience a little bit about yourself, how your journey began, and how did you become one of the top experts on the subject of money and business?
Oh, man. Yeah. So it's going to sound weird, but it began with a suicide attempt, December 18th, 2006. And I woke up to a book called The Secret, man. So you were talking about, the podcast being, it's not small. It's massive, right? And so I woke up to a book called The Secret, Thoughts Become Things, and that's where the whole journey started, man. And so as I started to transition into this new world of what's interesting, I want to say this, how crazy Jose, we were talking about this before we got in, how crazy the mindset is. Mindset is a mindset. It's a mindset to a frequency, and how my programming at a very early age was so set to a negative programming that right when I woke up from my attempted suicide, or was brought out of my attempted suicide, first thought I had was, I can't even kill myself correctly. The power of the mind. And then I was introduced to the book called The Secret, and I realized that I was creating those thoughts. I was creating those vibrations. I was creating that energy. And then from there, I ended up, obviously I made it. So thank God, thank Jesus Christ, Yeshua. And so, then all of a sudden I started to change my thoughts, and I started to change my frequency and change my thoughts. Now, I didn't know back then, that was 17 years ago. I didn't know frequency. I didn't know what was actually happening scientifically. All I knew was I had a second chance at life. And so I started with I am affirmations. And then I ended up going through a few odd and end jobs here, was getting evicted from my apartment, lost everything. And then one of my mentors who pretty much saved my life, Joe Italic, was like, hey, I want you to go to this interview for a banker. And I'm like, a banker? Like, I have dyslexia. It made no sense in the quantum field, like 0 sense. And so I'm an ex-bodybuilder, I'm like trying to get away from bodybuilding and all that environment. And I'll end the story right here to kind of kick it off. But I went to Goodwill. I bought a suit for, I think it was like 50 to 25 cents. I put this oversized suit on, went into the interview, and I sat with this lady. Her name was Lori Schmidt. I remember sitting across from her, and I kept thinking in my mind, I'm like, she's going to hire me. She's going to hire me. The affirmations, right? I kept, I'm a banker, and I went through all this process and went through the interview. At the end of it, I looked her in the eyes and I said, listen, Lori, if you hire me, this will be the best hire you ever had. I promise. At that point, I just needed a job. I had my 3-year-old daughter. I needed to take care of her. I couldn't pay my bills. And about 15 minutes later, the phone rings. I had my little flip phone. I pick it up, and she's like, hey, this is Lori. We want to hire you. And I was just like, what? And I said, well, why? She was like, because I was like, there's no way they're going to hire me as a banker. I had no banker skills. She was like, we like your energy. First introduction to energy and vibration. And so she said, we can train you. We can put you through schooling. And I said, oh, perfect. And so that was my first introduction to energy. And 17 years later, here we are, totally different life. And now there's been a long journey through that. So I'll kind of pause there. But that was my first introduction to energy, which I think comes from Christ consciousness, Yeshua. So
amen to that. Let me now, as an artist, and I say that very loosely because I sometimes don't even think comedians are artists. I think we just never grow up and we say all the things that are on our mind. But
love it.
I Jose knows this, and I've been very candid about this on podcasts before. And you mentioned attempt suicide. I've been through that dark hole before.
Yeah.
How, I remember, at least for me, it was staring at the gun and thinking about like the prescription of a 45 through my brain. You know, like
Yeah.
how did you climb out of that? Because for me, and it's like
Yeah.
before we set up to talking about money and everything else,
Mhm.
for me, it was a lot of my faith because I've always, Jose knows we grew up in the church, especially me, more me than Jose, because Jose is 8 years older than I am. He was at the house when I spent all the days in the lock-ins, all the days and the Pentecostal side of our family. I did all that, but I've always had this firm faith in Jesus Christ, my Lord, Yeshua, Yahweh, that great I am. I know who he is. I had a relationship with him. But in my dark moments, it was like the silence and absence that I felt. And I wonder, is like, how was that experience for you?
Wow, Daniel, that's a powerful question. So what's interesting is I'm the opposite of you guys. So I was born baptized Catholic, but I never went to church. I never got exposed to prayer, never got exposed to the story of Jesus, the Bible. My parents never talked about God, never taught me about Jesus. Christmas was Santa Claus and Easter was Easter bunnies. We went to funerals at church and weddings. That was it. So I had never got taught how to pray, never had exposure. So what's so interesting about what you said was I committed suicide December 18, 2006. I believe I was around 31 years old. I had never prayed in my life. I'd never been introduced to prayer, never been taught how to pray, anything like that. And the first thing I did before I took a massive amount of opiates to kill myself was I prayed. I kneeled down and I prayed to God. I said, and I'm going to paraphrase. I don't remember exactly how I said it, but I was like, dear God, this is not, trying to cry. This is not how I want it to be. I thought about my daughter. I thought about my mom. And I'm like, I'm very sorry for what I did. Please forgive me. And I'm speaking to this thing that I think is God. I'd never been introduced to God or Jesus Christ. And I truly believe that's why I was spared. I really believe, because that moment, whatever that was that I tapped into, and ironically, who woke me out of my attempted suicide was a phone call from my mom. It was 48 hours later. I took a massive amount of opiates. And she called me and said, she's a classy lady, man. She doesn't cuss. She says, I don't know what the F is going on with you, but your grandma just read a book called The Secret, and you need to get the book. See, she had no idea that I just attempted suicide. Zero idea. It had that razor flip phone. It said mom on it. And I was like, so I just like locked in. I went and got the book. But I believe that The Secret came to me first because it was kind of like a Bible for dummies to me. It was kind of like, hey, listen, thoughts become things, the great I am. Now that I know the great I am and all that, I'm like, it was like God was like, give him the secret, like just let him know what his thoughts did to him and let him start to take responsibility for his thoughts. And that's where my first introduction to God was. And then I first started actually in I'm a pendulum swinger, man. I'm just like an all-in guy. I'm a generator. I just go. So I'm like, okay, now I'm getting off drugs and I'm recovering, and I'm in The Secret and I'm doing affirmations and vision boards. So now I go from this extreme drug addict bodybuilder to now extreme manifestation guy, right? And but nothing seemed to be working in the physical world. It was kind of like I still believed, and also my 3-year-old daughter, man, that's what kept me going. And so there was this moment where I went into Buddhism, and I was like, oh, I'm going to be a Buddhist monk. Like that's what I'm going to do. So I read the Tao and I went through all this stuff, and I met this monk. I wish I could find this guy, man. There was these monks come down, and they take over a house in like a city, and they do their work. They teach people and stuff like that. And so he wore Jordans. This monk wore Jordans, and he wouldn't wear them in the temple inside the house. But I went over there. I found this Buddhist temple, and there was 2 lessons that he taught me that I didn't realize up until about 14 years later on a podcast interview. I'm like, holy shit, that's what he was talking about. So I was going into Buddhism, and I'm sitting there Indian style. And I have really tight hips, so it's hard for me to sit Indian style. It just doesn't work. And so everybody's sitting so perfect, and they're like kind of like the way I look now, hippy dippy, and they're like perfectly sitting, meditating. And the whole time, all I can think about is how tight my hips are and how uncomfortable I am. And he walks by one time and he goes, hey, what's wrong? And I said, I can't sit Indian style. And he goes, why are you sitting Indian style? I said, because everybody else is. He goes, how are you comfortable? I said, laying down. He said, then lay down. And so I laid down, and he walked by and he goes, always do you. So that was my first lesson from him that I didn't know was a lesson. And then we were doing walking meditation outside, heel toe. And one day I was like, and I was, coming off all the drugs. I'm starting to feel a little bit normal, like a normal human being. And I remember one day I was like, oh, I felt it. I felt like this. I never had felt sensation. I've been so disconnected from my emotions and my body and operating external from the things that happened to me as a child, that I had never really felt sensations of like the sun or never was present. I guess that would be the way to say it. So I felt the sun on one side, the breeze on the other side. And I was like, That's it. And I went to him and I said, dude, I felt it. And he's like, felt what? I said, I felt the breeze on one side and I felt the sun and I felt, and I said, is that it? He goes, I don't know. And I walked out of Buddhism but I figured out 13, 14 years later, I'm like, what he was telling me was always be myself. And he doesn't have the answer for me. That's the essence of Buddhism. He's like, you're the great I am. Dude. He goes, I don't freaking know, dude. It could be that, a truck hit you. That could be your awakening. I don't know. He was just like, I don't know. I'm walking in the grass right now. I'm present in my own experience. I don't know if the sun on your face and the breeze. And so that was the moment where I was like, man, this is so weird. And so I didn't really have a connection to anything. I was kind of like, I was just operating in this thoughts become things manifestation. And then I went into banking. That's when the banking journey started. And my spirituality really started when I left banking. So that was just 7 years ago. So
now, while you were in banking and when you left banking and you started to find spirituality, right? One thing that you've mentioned a lot in your videos is that they are both connected. Spirituality, finance, money, currency. Yes. How is it connected? And if you can explain it in the most simplest terms for the audience.
Yes, 100%. You said it, currency, right? A currency, it's money. It's a currency. It's a vibrational frequency. It's an energy. So we are the only living organism that pays bills. Just let that sink in. We are the only living organism that pays bills, and we're the only living organism that has a conscious mind, a thinking mind. So think about that for just a minute. So somebody at some point decided to create a system that disconnected us from who we truly are and made us start to trade time for money and made money an external thing, not something of value, that the value that comes from you and your truth and your alignment. What they did is they created jobs, right? And so they're like, okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to create workers, we're going to create jobs, and what we're going to do is we're going to trade time for money. That's how you're going to take care of your family, and that's the value that you're measured by, is your money. And so imagine a world, your parents go to school, get a job, get a 401k. That's what we've been told our whole lives. So specifically, it started since the 1900s, right? This is going to go into the banking and all that stuff. And so I did all those things. I did it. I attempted suicide, Cinderella story. I get done with that. I get into banking. I follow the affirmations. I do all this discipline stuff. I move up super fast in banking. I'm making all this money now, $250,000 a year, and I'm effing miserable. Miserable. Why? Because I'm not in alignment with who I'm truly meant to be. Even though I had the money, so what I started doing was buying the 535i BMW. I had the SUV, the house by the golf course, kept buying things, but nothing was changing inside. So now I'm no better than the drug addict that I was taking opiates. I was seeking something external. And that's what this specifically in America, the freest country in the world, which are the most enslaved mentally, is because we created this system that the value system of money is things. And that's not how money works. Money is an energy. It's a vibration. And when I started to discover that within banking, I started to see that we were supposed to be bankers, financial experts, financially educating people. But what we were doing is we're giving people payday loans and giving them credit cards they couldn't afford to borrow against their future self and trapping them into the system. And then I'm starting to sit down with these single moms that are trying to buy diapers for their kids, right? They got all these overdraft fees because the dad's not paying child support. And it was like this whole and then I had this weird conundrum because now Cinderella story, suicide to banker, making $250,000 a year. And now I have this moral and ethic compass that's kicking in, right? It's like, what the hell? So am I going to, and this is going to probably piss a lot of people off, but people always talk about the actors selling their soul for money. But if you trade time for money and something you don't love, that's selling your soul for money.
Haven't I said that before, Jose?
You have.
You're selling your soul.
Haven't I said that before? Yeah. It's funny you say that, right? Because we, in the topic of this podcast, we talk about people selling their souls and artists selling their souls. To me, that whole idea of selling your soul isn't necessarily to a demon, right?
Right.
I'm not denying the existence of evil and darkness in the world, or the things that'll come and prey on you, but it's like the artist, the Van Goghs of the world. They just sold out to themselves, and they drove themselves crazy, and they sold themselves to themselves. And I say that all the time, and we've had this discussion on the podcast before. It's like Jose will be like, look, it was a ritual killing for some demon, blah blah blah. I'm like, let's slow down. Slow down. This dude was obsessed with his work, and he lost himself in that. And
Mm.
we have to look at it from a human perspective. It's like, if you love something, it's so easy, like you say, because I identify with what you say, because I'm the same way with comedy. When I discovered comedy,
Mm.
it was like, wow, this is my calling in life.
Yeah.
It's cost me. I'll say it to the top of my lungs. It's cost me my family. It's cost me my marriage. It's cost me a
Mm.
lot of things. I'm not saying it was the only factor, but it was one of those things where it's like, it cost me a lot. Now I'm, obviously with perspective now, there was other things, but it's like, yeah, I sold my soul to get one thing, and I
Mm.
lost everything in the process.
But can I say something about that?
Go for it.
But okay, so as we go through, it's interesting. So there was a question that was asked to me. I was in a deep spiritual journey, and we were out talking. And I'm really, I'm just a student of life. I don't know anything, man. I'm just trying to learn as much as I can from every single human being I come in contact with. I believe in God, and I follow the life of Yeshua. That's my story. That's what I'm claiming. And so we're out there in the forest, and I have a very powerful coach. And I was like, I asked him. I said, who is God? And I brought this up in our academy many times. I said, who is God? And he looks me in the eyes, and we're out there, and he's like, just awkwardly looks me in the eyes in my soul, and he's like, you know who God is? And I'm like, and he's like, you know who God is? And he goes, let me ask you a question. He says, how does God know it is perfect? And I was like, that's a big question. He says, you know who God is. How does God know? He goes, let me ask you, let me stop for a minute. He goes, do you believe God is perfect? I said, yes, God is the creator. Like, do you believe Jesus is perfect? He said, yes. He said, how does God know he's perfect? He's like, through you. You're the imperfection of God. God came down through a wave of energy to experience imperfection, and your job is to master the darkness back into light. That's your job. So the suicide that you went to God before you committed suicide. So he's like, oh, in this lifetime, he's going to master this, and I'm going to give him another chance and see what he does with it. And then I started to realize the great I am, and then it goes into the secret, and then let's get biblical with it. Bible, Moses goes to the acacia bush, goes up and to the right, and I said he saw God face to face. Somebody argued with me. He saw God's back. I guess somebody argued with me. He saw God's back. He was close to God. And God, he was like, what did he do? He's like, oh, I have a speech impediment. I'm not good enough. Blah, blah, blah. And God's like, no, we're not playing this game, dude. You are perfect in my eyes. From here on out, my name is going to be the great I am. So what I started doing is go in the mirror and look at yourself and say, just like God did to Moses, and say, the great I am, and look at yourself and say it over and over again, and see what happens to how your heart feels. Just do it. Just practice. Go, the great I am, the great I am, the great I am. And you'll start to smile, and you start to get chills. And I'm like, what is that feeling? And that's a vibrational feeling. So when you start to embody this feeling and the thing for me is, like, for me, that broke down all the walls. So then I started looking at everybody as a imperfected God coming here to experience. So if I saw God face to face, how would I treat God? If I saw Jesus face to face, I would treat him with unconditional love. I would be just blown away if I got to meet God. So I start to look at all humanity as that. Like, I'm like, we're all God experiencing, transmuting darkness into light. And it changed my life, and it changed my frequency, and it changed my wealth. It started to change everything around me. Everything started to change. I have great relationships with my exes. I have great relationships with my kids. But before, everything was so difficult. It was so hard, because what was happening is the difficulty was being created by me, because I didn't see everybody as the great I am. I saw them as this enemy that I needed to go against, and I was going against myself.
That's powerful, because when people start realizing that and it says it in the first commandment, thou shalt love thy neighbor, right? And
Mhm.
our mission here is to love humanity as God loves us, right? And
Mhm.
when you found that, you understood that. And not everybody does. Not everybody does,
Mm.
because everybody's so focused on the external. Like today, I have a great example. Today I was driving Lyft in the morning, and I'm on the other side of town near the tourist area, and I'm literally stopped at a red light, and I have my windows down. I'm listening to a
Mhm.
little bit of music. It's a little bit loud, but whatever. It's not louder than normal. And
Yeah.
this lady behind me, she literally gets out of her car, starts screaming on the top of her lungs at me, turn your music down. You're
Mhm.
disturbing the peace. I'm like,
Yeah.
I have no idea why she's doing that, but
Yeah.
but that's just like the example, right? They're like, people are always trying to find someone else to blame, or instead of just like looking in the mirror and be like, the great I am that I am, right?
Yeah, because what is that? So with that lady, like let's go into like, so you guys are your podcast is going to explode. It's going to be the #1 podcast, right? So what's going to come with that? Hate, right? I'm experiencing that. I get massive amounts of hate. So how do I handle haters? They're not really haters. They're just a reflection, right? So like, for example, if someone's coming at me and hating on the way I talk about Jesus or God, when I say stuff like that, people are like, what are you talking about? I'm like, I don't know. All I'm talking about is what I'm experiencing. When people say, JV, your life has changed dramatically from 2000. So the last 7 years, my life has changed dramatically. And they're like, well, how did it change? Jesus Christ, Yeshua. My connection to Jesus Christ and my connection to God and building a relationship with God. A relationship. It's very different than what. So I went into a Christian church when I was an executive, and I would like to talk about that because, and this is not, I love everybody. I love all religions. I'm not against anybody. From my own personal experience, I was trying to find God. I was trying to find God. So I went into this a non-denominational Christian church, wonderful church. It was a grace church, and everybody's playing in the band and they're singing and stuff, and everybody's vibing and stuff. And I'm like, okay, the vibe's pretty cool here. But what I started to notice, and this is the thing that bothered me, is I went to some Bible studies and I started hanging out with these guys because I'm like, well, hey, the 5 people you surround yourself with. But what I noticed is I have severe dyslexia, so I have trouble. Like I have books all around me. Like that's one thing I've worked to master is because of dyslexia. And so reading the Bible, it takes me longer to absorb stuff. It takes me longer to read it. And so we're doing Bible studies, and I wasn't up on my Bible study, and I'm sitting with these gentlemen, and I will tell you how I feel. So I'm sitting with these gentlemen, and we're like there, and I see how they treat their spouses. I see them on social. They're more worried about their football teams. They're more worried about playing poker with each other. And I'm here trying to raise my kids and raise my family and get my shit together because, I'm at the second lease of life. And because I didn't understand the Bible verses like they did, they were kind of condemning me because I wasn't. And I said to them for a moment, I said, wait a minute. I said, so I'm trying to find God and you're condemning me because I can't spout Bible verses, but you guys are talking disrespectfully about women that walk by our table here at the restaurant. This doesn't make any sense to me. And so I started to get turned off by Christianity, and that's the problem. It's not that it was them. It wasn't. And then then I started blaming, it's the church. I'm like, it has nothing to do with the church. It's the person. It's the actual
corporation that church has become.
Yes. And so it's like so we're going to these places. And to me, I found out when I read it, when 2 or more gathered, it's church. And what that means to me is when I'm sitting with an ice bath and I'm now communicating with God, and I'm like, thank you so much, God. I pray on Twitter every day. People like, pray in your closet. But then I started to ask, I'm like, okay, when they say pray in your closet, what does that mean? So I started to study what that actually means. It doesn't mean you have to go pray in your closet. What Jesus was saying, when you go into your closet, darkness activates your pineal. Jacob saw God face to face. He called it what? Pineal. He fell asleep on the rock. When he fell asleep, the sacrum, he looked up. There was a ladder going up and down, and at the top was God. The ladder is your spine. So I was like, okay, wait a minute. So if I go in my closet and pray, it doesn't mean I can't pray on Twitter. It doesn't mean I can't pray in public. It means that I need to go in darkness, because when I close my eyes and I go in darkness, my true thoughts will come out. Right? It's not this fakeness that I'm putting on right now. It's my true thoughts. Like, JV, are you good enough? And my job is to rewire those thoughts. And if I can rewire those thoughts, when I open my eyes, so when it's dark, the pineal gland activates. When it's light, the pineal gland shuts down. So what you're seeing in the physical is the great I am. It's the great I am. It's what you've been saying to yourself internally over and over again. And then it gets deeper, because God created us as these beings from childhood, from womb to 8 years old. We're pure subconscious. We're just being programmed. That's it. So our parents, our grandparents, our church, our government, our schooling systems programmed us. And from 8 to death, we're trying to live off that programming. And so you go to somebody and you're like, oh, this hater's coming after you. I'm like, I don't even know this person. I don't know how they grew up. I don't know what their problem is. I don't know, like the lady yelling at you, who knows what's going on? So a Christ-like thing would be like, be like Christ. That's what a Christian is. Be like Christ would be like, hey, no problem. Just turn it down. And then she has to sit with herself. Oh, I thought he was going to react. I wanted to fight with somebody. That's vibrational frequency. She's like, I want someone to jump in the pool with me. Right. And then it goes into like the money thing. Right. And that's why people say you are the sum of the 5 people you surround yourself with. It's the frequency of the 5 people you surround yourself with. Like Jose and I'll give you an example of Jose. Okay. We were talking about, this is manifestation. We were talking about going into the Spanish market. Jose decided to speak. I don't remember what call we're on. We're on a call or something. He decides all of a sudden, he's like, hey, I need to say something. And he goes, have you ever thought of taking the 3T Academy into the Spanish market? I'm like, we were just talking about that. I'm like, yes, it's an aha. So our frequencies matched up. Now here we are, we're building insurance and the 3T Academy together. It's because the frequencies lined up. But what the world has taught us is it's an outside in effect. If Trump comes back, it's going to save us. If Jesus comes down on a white horse, you're going to be saved. My great grandma said Jesus was coming back. My grandma said Jesus is coming back. My parents stopped talking about Jesus. And he's here. He's right. He's in this conversation. He's like, go, go, go. And that's just my perception of it. And that goes into like money and frequency. Like everybody's like, when I talk about spirituality and money together, everybody's like, that's evil, blah, blah. I'm like, no, why is it evil? Yeah, go ahead.
Not to cut you off. And it's when people try to disassociate the connection between faith and money or spirituality and money is, even if you were to look into the Torah or old Bible or the Quran, it's spiritually it's how do I put it? It's not factual, right? Like in the Old Testament, it talks about giving your first fruits to let it be your local church, which is not necessarily, it like there's the functional aspect of keeping your local church moving and all those stuff, but it's the spiritual act of like give before you use.
Yes, that's it.
Right? It's the whole like trust me, like God saying trust me with this, the littlest of the things that you need in this world. This, the most unimportant. Trust me with this little bit and watch what I do. Right? Like a lot of people don't realize the spiritual aspect of that, right? Like I grew up with it, and even then, I'm just starting to get a realization of this. And I'm 33 years old, and I've been a practicing Christian for a long time. But like the spiritual aspect of money, and my faith, and how they do commingle.
100%.
God, I do believe that God does want us to be financially prosperous for His kingdom, but there needs to be. He won't prosper you unless you trust Him with it. It's like, how am I supposed to trust you with money? Well, you don't really trust me if you don't trust me with your money. It's like, why? Like, you want these big miracles, but you can't even give me $10 out of the 20 that you just got. Like what's up, dog?
Yes. Well, that goes into, like that's, and again, it goes into tithing, right? So like they say, give me your 10%. But if you really break down, so the Bible to me is the greatest book ever written about the story of humanity. Like, it's like, it is there's so many stories in there where it talks about right hemisphere. So I'll give you a couple examples. So, and this is just for me, I have a logical circuit in my brain. It's like logically, I try when I read the Bible or I read stories of Jesus, I'm like, what was he trying to tell us? Like, instead of being like just throwing out like those guys throwing Bible verses at me, it's like, well, what is he trying to say to us? So these guys are sitting in a boat. Jesus is standing on the water. It's like, holy shit, dude's like standing on water. That's crazy, right? So these guys are in a boat. They're casting their nets to the left side. They're on the left side. They're in the same ocean. And Jesus like, hey guys, cast your nets to the right. Trust me. They throw their nets to the right and they catch an abundance of fish, 153 fish. So people throw us about, well, what does that mean? 1 + 5 + 3 = 9. The number of 9 is God in the highest level of consciousness, right? So he's saying to them, you're in the left hemisphere, just like you said, you're scared, you have fear, you don't believe that you're going to catch fish, you don't believe in yourself. He's like, trust me, just get over to the right side. What they're saying is come over to the right hemisphere of the brain, which is taking you out of facts, figures, numbers, logic, worldly things. The devil is the prince of the earth. You get out of that state of mind where you don't believe in yourself. Moses went up and to the right. You cast your nets to the right. Jacob saw God face to face. He called it pineal, right? It's all these things. There's all kinds of things. He went up into to have the supper with them, right? He was right in the middle of the 12 disciples. Jesus said, take the middle ground. He said, take the middle ground. He was right in the middle. He says, this right here, once you master this, your body will be filled with light, right? There's a 7. Everything is 7, right? So I started to look logically. I'm like, wow, my body has 7 energy centers. People call them chakras and they go into, that's evil. It's like you have energy centers in your body. And then people would say, well, they don't exist because if you pulled your body apart, you wouldn't see circles of 7. Well, you have energy centers in your body. There's energy centers, chakras, whatever you want to call them. And Moses, right? He went up into the right of the mountain, acacia bush. He had a snake and then it became a staff. Snake represents Kundalini. Our doctors have it on their freaking lapel. It's a cross with a snake going up it, right? Instead of helping us master the snake inside of us, the Kundalini, and healing us, what they do is they give us synthetic medicine, and they keep the snake alive instead of mastering the snake. And there's so many different stories of the Bible of humanity. And so for me, I'm just expressing what I've learned by applying it to my actual life. And that's where the abundance started. And people are like, well, that's where the abundance came from. When I started believing that money is a frequency and money is energy, and it's based on the value that I see in myself and how I view myself and the value I can add to humanity, I'm equally compensated for that value because I mastered those energy centers within my body, and I believe in myself. I truly believe in myself. And if I can solve problems for humanity, I'll be rewarded greatly. It doesn't mean I'm greater than any other human being. And that's where it gets convoluted, and it goes in like my coach. We brought up Yeshua. I have a really powerful spiritual coach, and I really get into this stuff. And I was like, one day I woke up and I'm like, oh my God, his name is not Jesus, right? His name is Yeshua. And so a lot of people don't even realize his name is not Jesus. If he was walking around today and you had said, hey, Jesus, he wouldn't know who you're talking to, right? They changed his name, I think, to disconnect you from the truth of Christ, Jesus, Yeshua, right? But so I said to him, I'm like, oh my God, I've been putting amen in Jesus Christ, amen. Am I praying incorrectly? And he started laughing. He goes, I love your I love your heart, man. He said, but it doesn't matter if it's Jesus, if it's Yeshua. He says, what is your heart praying for? What are your intentions when you pray? Well, my intentions are to be loving and kind and to spread a good message and to speak to God. He said, then call him Bob, call him Frank, call him Julie. It's the intentions of your heart that matters. So that's kind of where I stand with the spirituality part of it. And then I love learning from other people. That's my favorite thing. So when someone opposes me, I ask them, why do you believe what you believe? Well, my pastor told me. That's not good enough for me. That's not good enough for me that your pastor just told you. I believe something because my pastor told me that. That doesn't make any sense. Like that's why our public is broke. That's why people are not able to pay their bills, because well, my mom told me and my dad told me to go to school, get a job, and get a 401k. How's that working out for you? That's what they told me. But what do you believe? Like, and that if we all, that's what they don't want. That goes into what we want about truth. They don't want us to believe in ourselves. Jesus was a hopium dealer, man. He was getting people to believe in themselves. They're like, we got to take this dude out as quick as possible. He comes riding back on a donkey. If I have an ego, man. So if I was the prince of the, or not, no, sorry, the devil's the prince of earth. If I was the king of the earth and everybody was seeing me as the master, right? Would I probably come back on a stallion, man, with flowing hair and stuff. He comes back on a donkey, wearing Birkenstocks, right? And think about that. What does a donkey represent? Humility. He came back humbled. Nobody talks about the 18 years he was gone. That's intriguing to me. So I've been studying that for years now. So like, for example, he comes back on a donkey, flips over the money changers, and they're like, oh, he's messing with our money now. He's messing with our money. Because they don't know that they're a frequency. They think that they have to take from other people. They have to take from other people. And he's like, no, you are the frequency. You are the energy. And he took undisciplined people and made them disciples. Discipline. That's it. And that's what Christ does.
He didn't only do that. He empowered not only the disciples, but he gave the power, empowered the disciples to empower others as well.
Yes.
Right? Because here's the thing, what the Bible talks about, especially as you go from the book of Acts into Romans, right? Where Peter and all these other characters start actually walking with the power of Christ, especially after the book of Acts, where the day of Pentecost came. Yeah. Where specifically Peter, his story is so great in the Bible. He's walking in the Spirit, and he's so on fire, knowing who he is and who he is in Christ, that his shadow was healing people.
Oof.
That's awesome, man.
His shadow, awesome. He would walk by cripples, and his shadow was healing people, right? Yes. And then people say, hey, where'd you get this power from? He was like, I didn't get this power. This power comes from the great I am, from Jesus Christ, power of the Lord and Savior, God. He was like, you can have it too, but you have to believe. Like these are things in the Bible. It's like Jesus came in, he trained his core 12. Right? One of them fell off. We don't know what happened to that guy, that traitor guy, right? But like the rest of the guys, they all went on to different parts of the world as they were evangelizing and building the early church. Yeah. To walk in that, to walk in that thing. And it's like, and the funny thing is, even got to this, like, here's a funny thing, and one of my favorite quotes from Jesus itself was in the Last Supper. It's like, you know what's crazy, guys? You guys get to see me, and I'm paraphrasing, honestly, because I'm like you, I don't really
Yeah.
do hardcore Bible verses.
Yeah.
He goes, it's crazy that y'all get to see me and believe, but greater are those who don't get to see me, and they believe as much as you do.
Oh my God, dude. You dropped some heat, man. Okay, so the shadow thing. Let's go to 2020 when the pandemic hit. Why do you think they made us 6 feet apart, man?
Go for it.
The shadows can heal, man. They didn't want high frequency people. They didn't want us close to each other because your energy goes 6 feet out. You can measure people's energy. It goes 6 feet out. So they made us 6 feet apart, put masks on us so we couldn't see each other's expressions, and they literally sucked our souls out of us. That's what you said, that like his shadow was healing people. They didn't want people tapping in and tuning in, because if we did that, we would be healing people by our shadows. And that one of there's an app called The Chosen. Like, it's really good. That I just love the way that they articulate the story of Jesus. And there was this moment where Jesus was around his disciples, just like you said. There's this moment where he empowered them, and it just looks so badass in the story. He's sitting there, he's with these 12 disciples, and they have Big James, Little James, and all these, and he's like, hey guys, I'm bouncing. You guys are going to go heal people now. And they're all like, their faces, they were all like, what? He's like, no, you guys are going to go heal people. And this is my favorite part. So he's walking out. He's like, I'm out, dude. I'm going to go meditate, pray, do my thing. I'm going to connect with God. Little James, who was crippled, runs out in the story. And he's like, Master, Rabboni, whatever. So Rabboni, he said, why won't you heal me? And this 2 stories that I'll bring up. He said, how big of a miracle would be for a crippled to heal somebody. And what I heard in that, he's saying, little James, I can't heal you. You don't even believe in yourself. If you don't believe in yourself, I can't heal you. And he bounces. Then he goes to the guy. Remember, the Pharisees are there, and the guys, that one guy's brother was crippled, and he was on a mat, right? He was waiting for this fountain, right? And so everybody, they believed that they made these people believe that there's this fountain there, that if you get to it first, it's going to heal you. External, just like we're waiting for Trump to come back, or we're waiting for this person to come back. We've all been waiting for a savior. And he walks, and they're like, Master, they're going to be looking for you. He's like, he was a renegade, man. He goes walking in, he kneels down, looks the guy in the eyes, and he says, do you want to be healed? Do you? And he says, yes. And he goes, pick your mat up and walk. Dude picks his mat up and walks, and they're like, oh shit, he's telling them the secret that we have hidden in the archives. Like, he's teaching him the secret. Like, we know what he learned those 18 years, because before he was 12, he was in the synagogues. He was spitting fire. Like, he knew the Bible. And you know, it's funny that you said, Daniel, about, like, I'm not a theologian. I don't have the Bible memorized, but I know the story. And I think it's because, and this is what I said just recently, and I've been doing this lately. Every adult I've been meeting, I ask them, do you know who Jesus Christ is? They're like, oh yeah. Even if they're not a Christian, even if they believe in Buddha, but every adult I meet, I ask them if they know Jesus Christ. And they say yes. I bet you if we went to every single adult in the world, adult at least, they would know Jesus Christ. He's the biggest influencer in the world. Why? Because he's in us. We all know Christ. In the story of, like, Jake, or you talk about who betrayed him, Judas. I'm so glad we're talking. I love this stuff, man. So when he goes to the Last Supper, that's one of my favorite things. He goes up, up, up. He goes into the middle ground. Jesus told us a secret. He said, take the middle ground, right? He said, if your eye be single, your body will fill with light. So he's in the middle of them. On the right is Judas. He masters Judas, judgment, and then he ascends. Boom. Right after he masters Judas, he forgives the guy who freaking killed him, and he ascends, and he comes back as light. And it's like, man. And then Mary Magdalene goes to see, this is first to see, she had a mark on her head right here. And I don't know if I'm talking freaking craziness, but I've been applying this stuff to my life in a practical sense. Like, hey, listen, like, well, what if I take no thought? What if I meditate every day and I just sit? And the first time, just recently, the first time ever, I'm having these powerful, like, I have a relationship with God, but I've never been able to hear God like talk to me. And it was always seemed like my voice, right? It's like, oh, is that me, or is that, like, am I just making this up? And I was in an ice bath just recently. It was about a month ago, and the first time ever, I really believe I heard God, and maybe it was kind of a different tone to the voice. I said, God, I just want to hear you. I just want to hear you. And he said, I am here. And I was like,
Whoa.
Is that you? And he said, yes, this is me. He said, I am you. And I said, you are me? He said, I am you. I am here. I'm with you. And I was just like chills through my whole body. And I was in the ice bath for like 15 minutes. And my body just, I wasn't here. And then I came back and I'm like, God, and I have not been able to recapture that. But what I held from that was that he's really with us. Like all Christ is with us. And I think what humanity needs, and I know what's happening right now, is Christ is waking up in all of humanity, whether they like it or not. Whether they like it or not, the rapture is here. In not a physical sense, but in a spiritual. Because I don't know if you guys can feel it. The energy is shifting, man.
Well, yes,
You know?
there's a lot of things happening, right? We look at pop culture, and I don't know how tapped in you guys are in with like we talk a lot. At least I do, right? With a lot of the Christian content creators on YouTube, there's a lot of revivals happening all over the country and all over the world. A lot of little things, right? Like a few months ago, there was a 48-hour revival where college students were there speaking in tongues and making deliverances and stuff like that. Now, how much, it's one of those things. It's crazy what's happening all over the world. A lot of it is going crazy, and I see it happening. I live in DFW, and I'm telling you, the things that I'm seeing are insane.
Yes. Yeah. There is a revival happening, and it's like, and so what I've been sharing with people around me, and it's like, I'm like, I don't have the answer for anybody, but what I do know is what we should be doing is expanding consciousness, not repeating it. Cause that's the trick here, right? It's like, God made us these creatures where we can think, we can walk, we can talk. And then he threw in a caveat, free will. It's like, wow, man, we can actually think, take action based on those thoughts. And then we can control our emotions. And then we have free will to do what we want. So people are like, well, why would God? So when people argue about God, why would God kill children? God doesn't kill children. Like God doesn't, that's his children. Like, why would he kill children? So if you look at the energy centers within the body, right, you have the carnal mind and you have the higher mind, right? And you have, well, then we'll go into like numbers and stuff. Like you have 666, like everybody's like the devil. You take evil, you put a D in evil, that's the devil. You take a O out of God, good, and that's God, right? So if you're a good person, you don't have to be go to a church or be a theologian to be a good person, right? You don't have to be go to a satanic church to be an evil person. You can be an evil person. What it is the further you get disconnected from source, God, who you truly are, through trading time for money, doing a job you hate. Like, how are we supposed to thrive if we're in a job that we went to school for because our parents want us to be an engineer? And now you hate what you're doing. You're totally out of alignment with who you're supposed to be. You get married, you have kids, and then you come home burnt out every single night. And you're supposed to be happy, joyful with your spouse. And then what happens is when people like me in 2017 say, I'm leaving my corporate job, everybody's like, dude, you're an idiot. What are you doing? I'm like, I have to go find myself. And that sounds so irresponsible, doesn't it? Like, oh, you're going to go find yourself, JV? I'm like, yes, I'm going to go find myself. And because I can't live like this anymore. I'm driving to work and like, I hate my job. And I'm like, but I'm trapped. My soul, all this money is coming in. I got a freaking badass BMW, the SUV. And what are people going to think when all that stuff goes away? And then guess what it did? It got ripped from me. I lost everything in 2018 building the business. And then in 2000, I think it was back into 2018, I started driving Uber. And I didn't want to show people because I was embarrassed. I was like, oh my God, they're going to make fun of me. And I realized nobody fucking cares. Nobody's paying attention. Nobody gives a shit. Like we think when we post, like, for example, this is my favorite thing to say. Like, I'll post stuff on Twitter and then I'll put it on my story when I'm emotional. I'm like, oh, I bet you people are reading. Oh, JV's pissed. Nobody cares. Nobody actually cares. We, in our mind, we're like, everybody's going to stop and look at his post like, oh, he's the lion right now. He's so mad. They're like, what the fuck, dude, whatever. And so when I realized that, I'm like, nobody cares. I care. And so I'm like, all I should focus on is my ecosystem, my family. So then I went into what I call the highest levels of frequency, where there's authenticity, gratitude, and love, unconditional love. So I started being authentic with myself. I'm like, you know what? Just show people you're driving Uber, dude. So I started showing people I was driving Uber. They're like, oh shit, man, that's kind of cool. Like, you're struggling too. I'm like, yes, but here's what I'm going to do about it. And then I finally get my shit together, and then fucking COVID hits and they take my business away from me. And I'm like, oh my God. So then I got even more pissed. And then I freaking showed, and I'm broke on my parents' couch. I'm like, I'm going full authentic. And that's when everything changed for me. Authenticity, gratitude, and unconditional love. So I became unconditionally loving to every single human being I came in contact with. I still get pissed and get angry, but I started to find gratitude for every single thing within my life, every single day, being the fact that I could stay on my parents' couch, that my kids had food and shelter. And then I started being brutally authentic, and my life started to change so unbelievably fast. And that's what I try to encourage people to do. It's like, because authenticity releases all the stress from you. Because all my darkness is out there, dude. It's on a video. Like some hater built a website about me. I'm like, bro, just everything you posted, I've already talked about. Like I'm like Eminem, man. You know, in the rap battle, like I already told on myself.
I am broke. I am a white piece of trash.
Yeah. Yep. I Eminem the people. Like they know. I always tell people too. I'm like, when I was a drug addict, I was an opiate addict. That's what led up to my suicide. And I just missed that part of the story, but that, you know, I did. If you've ever met an opiate addict, dude, I did some shady ass.
I work
shit.
in the pharmacy industry. I know plenty of opiate addicts.
Yes. It's shady. It's like it was dark, man. And I did some stuff will come to light, and I've already expressed that on videos. Like it will come to light because people are digging, trying to find stuff. I'm like, hey, if you find it, I'll be the first. It'll probably make me 10 times more famous because I'm gonna own that shit. Because that's already the story's been told already. Because I'm so proud of how dark I came from to where I'm at now. And this is why I know that I was able to get here, because if anybody's listening to this and you're really struggling, it's like a slingshot. The further the slingshot is pulled back, the higher you can ascend. And it just maybe switch the way you're looking at it, that God has put you through these challenges because you are someone who can ascend to a very, very high level. You know, maybe you're stuck on opiates or you got divorced and your relationship is falling apart. It's like, pretend everything is happening for you and nothing is against you, and take that energy and transmute it into light. What does that look like? How do you do that? Right? It could be exercise, fitness, you know, like what we call it a glow up after a breakup, right? You glow up, you get your shit together, start reading, educating yourself, because people, like all these haters come out and I'm like, you don't realize you make me more popular when you do that, because what it tells people is it's possible for me. JV was a piece of shit before. So if he was a piece of shit and now he's here, or whatever success looks like to people, if they think I'm successful, like that, I can do it too. So it's like, I just think that's the biggest thing, because everybody fears being judged by other people when we're all fearing being judged by other people.
So, absolutely. I think that's I think that's one of the things that I've been being able to master, is not really let what other people think about what I'm doing with my businesses or my content. And I'm really just focusing if my content makes me happy, if the content makes my brother happy, right? Like if our content excites us, we know it's going to do good, right?
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So I don't really care at this point. Before I was just like, when I had my other projects before I did, but I think it's very important for any of the listeners who are content creators. If you have your own podcast, you know, just keep moving forward and if it excites you, it's going to do well. Don't care about, it doesn't matter what everybody else thinks. But let's change the conversation a little bit, because I absolutely love talking about the spiritual stuff. And yes, and we can make this a 3-hour podcast, but we got to talk about the money, man, because first of all, the United States is in a terrible monetary position, $34 trillion debt right now. Interest rates are high, inflation's high, cost of groceries are high. You know, Webster defines money as something generally accepted as a medium of exchange, a measure of value, means of payment. And as we've discussed earlier, it's a lot more than that. So as you were at the very top of the banking industry, now you have your own companies. What is JV's understanding of money?
Yeah, so it's an exchange of value. That's what money is. Like money just moves through the system based on a value system, right? So in America specifically, money is debt. There's all of us sitting here, my income is your debt is my income. And when people understand that, they start to look at money differently. So I'll explain that. So when I walk into the bank and I deposit into XYZ bank $10,000, Jose comes walking in, he needs a $9,000 loan for a car. They give Jose $9,000 of my money as a loan. And then Jose goes over to bank XYZ. He puts in $9,000 and that bank lends out $8,000 of that money, the same money. It's now multiplied twice. There's no new money created. And then they give it to Daniel to go buy an $8,000 car. And then Daniel walks into his bank. It's called fractional reserves. He deposits it. And then somebody comes in and get a $7,000, and it goes 9 times. and it's the same $10,000 that I deposited. There's no new money created. So when you know that money is just debt in America, and we're at 120% debt to income ratio, there's more debt than there is income. There's more. So GDP to debt is negative. We're bankrupt in America, right? So when you understand that, there's just money just moves through the system based on value, right? So if you're, how do I say this in a positive way? I want to get to people's heart and help them understand, like, because everybody thinks like, oh, I need to work more hours in order to make more money. No, you need to make your money work for you so you can work less hours. That's it. It has to be opposite. It's called a cash flow quadrant, right? So most people operate on the left side of the cash flow. That was me. I was an employee. I got paid. I put a little bit of money in my 401k, which would kind of put you on the right side. I moved from an employee down to self-employed, but it didn't change anything because I'm still trading time for money. I didn't scale my businesses. So I'm stuck. Most of America is stuck on the left side. They have to, in order to make more money, they need to give up more time. They need to give up something from their family, right? The key to money is to get your money working from you, right? Working for you. You can either be an investor. So every single time you get paid, you talked about the 10%. Take that 10% and invest it in something that's going to multiply. So money needs to move, and that's why they call it current. There you go. Perfect. Yeah, let's walk through this really quickly because this is really important. This is what changed my life. So first I went from employee down to self-employed, which nothing really changed because I was still trading time for money in my business. So even though I had my own business, it still was based on how much time I put in to the business, right? Then I started to bring on employees and I scaled myself into the managerial position within my company. And now other people were helping me make money. The key to that, though, is when I started making more income and started to become wealthier, I didn't take my income and buy Ferraris and Lamborghinis. I became an investor. So I took the excess money and I put it into investments, which allowed the money to grow. So then when that money grow, then I take the profit from that investment and I bought more businesses. So what I started to do is I started to multiply not only my money, but I duplicated myself. And Warren Buffett says, you're never going to be wealthy till you make money while you sleep. So as people are sitting there and they're like, well, shoot, I'm not an entrepreneur type person. That's fine. But if you can be an employee and become wealthy by taking your money and investing in yourself first, right, into assets. So knowing that money is just debt, the debt instrument, what happens is working class people get debt to make wealthy people wealthier. Wealthy people get debt to buy the assets that working class buy, right? So it's just, so if you just look at it, it's all a balance of debt. That's all it is. And the problem with America, it used to be the American dream, is that Americans use debt because if I make $100,000 a year and I get a $30,000 line of credit, I just increased my earning capacity to $130,000. But my ability to pay for that didn't increase. I just increased my earning capacity by 130,000, but I'm banking that my future self will be able to pay for that, right? If I took that debt and bought a company or I bought something that's cash, that's awesome. But if I took that debt and I went on vacation, then that's not good because now I'm borrowing against my future self. And that's what happened in America. Like I'll give an example of America specifically. My parents bought a house in 1973 for $23,000. They live in the exact
house price.
What's that?
I wish the houses were still.
It's crazy. Go listen to this, man. They live in the same house. $23,000. Do you know how much that house is worth now in 2024? $400,000. Okay, so 1973, $23,000. 2024, $400,000. Has their pay gone up that much? Nope, absolutely not. Their productivity, right? The pay stayed the same. The pay hasn't jumped up that much so what happened is we just keep borrowing and extending our money out longer and longer. So your job as an investor is to get your money flowing on the right side of the quadrant, to make sure that you're taking your money and earning money. So that's what money is. It's debt. Unfortunately, it's debt. And then you have to understand how to get your money into instruments that will allow your money to grow. And that's the simplicity of money. And then also when it comes to making money, if you're an entrepreneur, like I learned this from a billionaire gentleman in Dubai. He said, the bigger problem you can solve for humanity with good intentions, the wealthier you will become. This gentleman basically in every single computer you use, there's a computer chip in every single computer you use. He's a billionaire. He created something that all the public needs, right? So like we created the Warrior Academy. We created an education academy that solved a massive problem, right? We created an insurance company that solves a massive problem. We created Merlin. It solves a massive problem. So we found a problem and we solved it or we improve it. And so that's a way into entrepreneurship, but that's the explanation of money and what it is. And again, too, I really encourage people, and I know parents wouldn't want me to say this to people, but try to do something you love, man. Like try to do something you love. I know it's cliche, but God, I don't work a day in my life. I mean, that's why I was like, God, I just text, I've got everything taken care of. I'm like, I want to be here right now. It's like, this is freaking awesome, man. Like this is, so I know that was a long explanation of money, but it's just, and now it's going quantum. It's going to be digital. It's going to be fast. It's going to be quick. Right. And what we want to make sure that we don't get trapped on the wrong end of this switch. The middle class, I'm just going to say this, the middle class is getting wiped out, moving down to the working poor. Mark my word, the next 5 to 6 years. Yep. There's going to be the working poor, and there's going to be the really, really rich. There's going to be no middle ground. And the really poor are going to have to rely off government and assistance. And they're going to call it this utopian, you're going to own nothing and be happy and all this stuff. And we'll take care of you. And it's like
the 2030 agenda.
2030 agenda.
Klaus Schwab Jr.
Yeah, you got it. Yeah, you got it.
Yeah, we know who you're talking about.
Yep.
Now let me ask you. You know, you covered on how the different quadrants of cash flow. What do you think about guys like Gordon Ramsay? No, not the cook.
Oh, his food's good, man.
Not him. No, the guy that runs Financial Peace University.
Dave Ramsey.
Dave Ramsey. Dave Ramsey. He talks more about like money management. The whole baby steps. Yep. Which I've done, and I'll be for a single man. It's worked pretty well for me as far as not being crazy. To me, before you can invest anything, you better know how to manage your basics, right?
Perfect. Yep, 100%.
But like, how does somebody, for example, I'm 33, I don't have any kids, I'm divorced, I'm coming out of that, I don't have a lot of money. But I'm slowly moving in from this, working for somebody else and with Jose and on my own, moving into this self-employed and trying to build these businesses. How do I keep applying those basic money management principles of your emergency, your $1,000 of emergency plus your, paying off your debt plus, 3 to 6 months of just in case money. How does one do that when, everything with society telling you, hey, you want to become a millionaire? Subscribe to this thing and whatever, or do that thing and in crypto and all this. And I'm a money idiot. I just tell you this, like, I just try not to spend. I just try not to spend.
Yep. So we'll start with you nailed it, man. That's why I gave a thumbs up. The basics, like we have to get back to basics, man. Number one is every person I talk to, me too, they don't have a budget. You have to have a budget. You gotta know the problem. The advent of a debit card ruined that because people used to balance their checkbooks because they wouldn't know how much money they had because you couldn't write checks. You had to balance your checkbook. But when a debit card came out, everybody stopped budgeting. And the problem is everything is so quick now. So first, you nailed it. First thing is you have to create a budget. You need to understand what's going out and what's coming in. Number two is you need to make sure that for a long time until you're, this is just, people are not going to hear this. They want to do fun stuff all the time. You should never buy a liability unless an asset can pay for it. And I'll explain that. But let's start in the basics. So you have a budget. Then from a budget, there's only two ways you can earn income, right? You can increase your earning capacity or you can save your way, or you can create a budget, right? So imagine if you created a budget and you create earning like you're doing. You have maybe a job and then you create a side business. When the extra income comes in, the income that is extra should always be invested somewhere. It could be cryptocurrency, the stock market, insurance. You should always be making sure your money is compounding. You only should start to buy liabilities. There's kind of a mix for me. And we use debt to build businesses. So Dave Ramsey would say, no debt. We actually use debt responsibly for businesses. So I agree with his debt snowball. I agree with being out of debt. I don't agree with him telling people to have tons of cash in the bank. It's fake money. It's fiat. It's fugazi, man. It doesn't, fiat is fake money. It doesn't make any sense. So I'm kind of a mix of Dave Ramsey. I don't have bad debt. I have good debt. So when you start to understand what debt is, you only want to use debt in order to Say you get a $30,000 loan to make a down payment on a business that is going to bring you cash flow. That makes sense. That makes sense. Then you're going into a business too that you can write things off. You can buy a car through your business, right? Tax write-offs. I had to buy a vehicle for one of our cars to get a tax write-off. You can write 80% of the value. So what people should do is learn how to budget. We talk about this in the academy, financial literacy. People should understand what money is, right? That money is just debt. And when you start to understand that, when you're standing across from somebody, that my debt is your income, it's like, okay, so if my debt is your income, then what side of the quadrant do I want to be? Do I want to be the person giving the solution or the person that needs the solution? You always want to be the person giving the solution. So like, and then what you guys are doing too, like the digital space, man, like for anybody who wants to be an entrepreneur, I love what you guys are doing because it's it's so unrealistic to be able to be on a computer. I built $1 million companies off of an iPhone, a microphone, and I don't have fancy stuff, dude. I have Apple and a microphone. I travel around with this thing. We built 7-figure ecosystems off a freaking computer. It's like, holy shit. So I know I'm going all over the place, but first you said at the foundation. Okay. First you have to rewire the foundation, rewire your brain. You have to rewire why you're broke, because it usually comes from your parents. It comes from the indoctrination from your parents, right? Then from there, it's like, okay, if you rewire it, then you need to add new programming in. You need to educate yourself. Richest Man in Babylon, Think and Grow Rich, Secrets of the Millionaire Mind, Intelligent Investor, Robert Kiyosaki, Cash Flow Quadrant. These are books that you can read to start to reprogram the brain. Then you want to change your surroundings, right? If your friends are I'm gonna use Andrew Tate's brokies. If they're all brokies, like you're gonna end up broke. I promise you, you're going to end up broke, right? You should be around people that are having conversations around building. If I'm around somebody that's not talking 5-year, 10-year projections, I'm not building businesses with you. Like if someone's like, oh, how am I going to get rich in 12 months? I'm out. Like it's 5 years, 10 years, so long-term projections. Once you do that, then we need to learn financial literacy. You need to understand what money is, or you'll always be played. Who is the Federal Reserve? Like you said, World Economic Forum, right? What is money? The Federal Reserve controls your money supply. Understand what interest rates are. What is it? What happens to your money when interest rates go down? From there, then you have to learn how to earn, right? So for me, I was broke on my parents' couch. I rewired the brain. I developed financial literacy, understood what money truly was. And I was even a banker and I didn't know. That's pretty sad, right? But I really understood the how they control the money system. Then from there, I started doing Gary Vay's strategy, Gary Vay. It was like the $20,000 flip thing. I started going to free Facebook Marketplace, getting free stuff, getting free. It was crazy. I'd get a couch, clean it up, and sell it for $100, and I'd put it into crypto. And I turned 1,000 into 10,000, 10,000 into 30, and then I hit the bull run, and that's how it all started. From like, wait a minute, there is money everywhere. It's everywhere. And every time money hits my account, so today is Wednesday, right? So Wednesday and Friday, I get dividends from my companies. Every Wednesday and Friday, I always look at where my money's at and where it needs to move. So money always needs to move. And you can't, another thing too is, I think there's good from all of them, like Dave Ramsey, but I don't like the fear because if you fear money and you fear that you're going to be broke and you fear you are going to be broke, 100%, you can't fear money. You have to release your fear of money, right? Because money is scared money doesn't make money. if that makes sense. Yeah.
Thing is, I don't know if I agree with that assessment. I think, at least from my perspective, what I've gathered from reading his stuff is money's a tool.
Yeah,
right.
Yes,
money's a tool. Like money, like it's like if I were to put a gun on this table and it's not loaded and tell it to shoot, it's not going to shoot anybody.
Right.
But if I load it and point it at somebody, it could do some damage. Same thing if I mismanage my money, it'll make immense damage towards me or towards anybody else.
Yep.
But when I think about, especially with 2024 eyes and how most young people, and I say young people is anybody under 30, right?
Yeah.
And how they think about money and how they want this to be rich and just get quick scheme. And I'm over here like, I was there. I've been, I've sat in a, studio apartment by myself in a freaking futon because I had nothing else to sleep on. And I'm sitting there, it's like, that's not where I was misusing my money. I was just getting by. Now I'm over here in a better place. But it took discipline. We talked about discipline and budgeting and becoming financially literate. How if you can give an advice to a 21-year-old getting out of college right now,
Mhm.
which I think college is the worst thing you can do in 2024.
Yeah, amen. Man.
Right,
Yeah.
right. But let's say he went to school to be a mechanic,
Yep.
right? A trade
Yep.
school, smart kid.
Yep.
What would you tell him to do? What are the 4 things you would tell him to do right now
Perfect.
to use his money? How to
Yeah,
use
so
it?
I'll use my daughter's example. She graduated high school and she's now 20. So basically, I took my daughter and I sat her down, and the first thing that I did is I taught her the budget number one, right? So I taught her the budget. Also, number two is I taught her about assets and liabilities. So you have to understand what an asset. If you ask my son or my daughter, you say, is a car an asset or liability? They'll be liability. Is a house an asset or liability? It's an asset. So you have to understand what assets and liabilities are. I shared with her also how the capital markets work. And so what she did is instead of going to college, she's like, I'm not going to waste your money and go to college. She actually took all her graduation money and she put it into cryptocurrency. I built her a fundamental cryptocurrency portfolio. Number one, she has tons of time to be high risk, right? So I put her into fundamental cryptocurrency portfolio and I set her up with an index universal life insurance policy. My daughter now is 20 years old. So that's 4 things that she did: budgeting, financial literacy. She went into cryptocurrency, and then she started her IUL policy. She is now 20 years old. I hope she's okay with me sharing this. She's 20 years old and she has more in her crypto and more in her insurance than most adults have at retirement.
Wow.
Because so just to make it very clear for anybody that's young, money compounds every 7 years. And I'll give you an example of this. So my son is 8 and my daughter is 20. They're both going to retire already with $1.6 million, right? The amount of money I have to put away for my son versus my daughter, the amount she puts away is double because of time. Money compounds every 7 years. So the earlier you start, the better off you're going to be. So I had to start all over at 42 years old. So I have to put away close to $17,000 a month to get to the goals that I want to go to, investment wise, a month to get to the goals that I want to get to. So when I figured out what I wanted to retire with, I had to figure out how to earn more money. So when you figure out, and another thing I'll leave them with the fifth one is, if you want to be balling, like they all want to ball out of control and have all this. Okay. So if you want to be really a real flex is going and figuring out how much you want to retire with, and say you're 20 years old. You're like, I want to retire with $10 million, and then reverse engineer that all the way to being 20 and how much you need to save on a monthly basis and start now. That's the biggest flex ever. Right. So that's what I do with my daughter. So it's so much fun. Like we'll go to like a party or a family party and stuff, and they'll go to my daughter like, so where are you going to school, Raven? And she's like, I don't go to school. What do you do? She's like, I work at a tanning salon. I manage a tanning salon. They're like, oh, are you going to go to school? She's like, no. And I'm like, because she knows, I tell you, you don't have to explain it. She has more money, I guarantee you, than the person that's sitting in front of her, right? And so I say, you don't have to justify shit to any of these people. And like, well, what do you do? She goes, well, I invest in the capital markets and I have, insurance plans. She goes, well, why do you work at a tanning salon? Well, I'm working at a tanning salon because I'm going to work at the airlines when I turn 21. I'm going to travel the world for free. And they're like, well, what are you going to do like for your job? And she's like, I'm going to do what I want. And they just can't comprehend it. And she's like, she doesn't have to explain. I'm like, you don't have to explain yourself to anybody, because parents, and it's not the parents' fault. We're teaching our kids how to be slaves, man. Like that's a brutal thing to say, but we're teaching our kids how to be slaves. And then there's kids on Twitch that are making more than doctors, man. There's YouTubers making more. I mean, the world has shifted. Parents have to wake up to that. The world has shifted. I'm some long-haired hippie dude building freaking 7-figure companies off of iPhone and a freaking laptop. Like, it doesn't make any sense until it does. And so if you're young, what I want to say is, and Gary Vee says this all the time, you have a lot of time too. That's one thing, but you don't have time. You'll never have time back to compound your money.
That's true.
You say that one more time. You'll never have time back. Every minute that goes by, you've missed an opportunity to compound your money. So you can do it in things like insurance, index universal life. You can do it in put it in crypto and hold it, put it in the stock market. And the earlier you start, you have tons of time. And so for someone like me, I have to play the markets, like the crypto market, to pull profits. But my daughter, she's sitting there. I said, pull your portfolio. We just went through that big boom just recently. I said, sweetie, pull your portfolio up. And she's like, she doesn't even look at it. She's like, holy shit. Like I told you. And now she believes. She's like, whoa, what just happened? I'm like, Dad. She said, Dad, what just happened? I said, do you realize if you just maintain what you're doing, you are going to be a multi-millionaire by the time you retire? Because she has time. That's it. You have tons of
Yeah,
time.
if the way things are going before she's 30, what are you talking about?
100, or probably before she's 25. Yeah, our goal is to get her to 1 million by 30, and my goal is to teach my kids to be whatever they truly want to be. Now that's a discovery process. So for her first 10 years up until 30, I didn't know who the hell I was until I was 48, man, until just recently. But my point behind this is her first 10s of your life. I'm like, dude, enjoy your life. Have fun. You know, I just got her new, she's actually coming home tonight. I just bought her a new car, I bought her Hyundai Elantra, a Hyundai Elantra. It's a cool little turbo car. And like, some of her friends are buying really nice BMWs and shit. And I'm like, she could afford it. But I'm like, I go, just go ride in their car. Like, drive your little Elantra, freaking, you got to, it's like, because she knows, she's like, Dad, that's a liability. I'm like, yes, that's a liability. You get it now. Right. And so it's like, I'm teaching them the game. First, we have to teach ourselves the money game. Then we need to teach our kids. That's how we fix this country. And we get our shit together as parents and future parents. And then we teach the kids. That's how you fix it. That's,
Now, to close out today's show, I want to talk about the Federal Reserve, because there's nothing more conspiratorial than the meeting at Jekyll Island, right? We have the Morgans, we have the Rockefellers, the Rothschilds, all having the secret meeting at Jekyll Island to form the Federal Reserve. So what's your interpretation of the Federal Reserve? Because people don't know. A lot of people, if you go around asking, hey, do you know what the Federal Reserve is? They actually think that it's a part of the government, but it's actually not a government entity.
It's a private entity, everybody.
Yeah, and they're not even supposed to communicate with the president. That's why, and you see recently, so we'll backwards engineer this. Jerome Powell lately has been throwing shots at Congress like, hey, I control money supply and interest rates. It's their policies that are fucking this up. He keeps saying that because they're not even supposed to meet with the president, because they're supposed to be this. So basically the Federal Reserve, and that's why if you go into the creature of Jekyll Island, it's basically an island where it was a private island where they would go to very wealthy people, go to wealthy bankers. They changed all their names because it was the bankers. The bankers created a central bank to feed the banks. It was crazy. And so they created a private entity that they get to print as much money as they want, and they get to control interest rates, right? In the job markets, right? So the Federal Reserve was created in 1913. And since 1913, you guys all have homework. Go check this out and look what's happened to the dollar since the Federal Reserve was created, which is supposed to control money supply and job markets. And they do that through interest rates. Interest rates are illegal taxation, basically, or inflation is illegal taxation. Sorry. So they'll print money, and it's like the Cantillon effect. It goes to the top and it bleeds down to us, and we put it back in the bank, and then they Ponzi scheme it and just keeps going. So basically the Federal Reserve was created in 1913. In 1929, we had the Great Depression. So think about that. Hear ye, the banks are collapsing. There was 11,000, don't quote me unless I'm paraphrasing, kind of like biblical stuff, 11,000 banks underneath the Federal Reserve. They wanted everybody underneath the Federal Reserve so they can control the system. So what they did was, just like they're doing now, is they pumped a bunch of money into those 11,000 banks, and they had them loan money to the banks that were failing, right? So again, monopolizing what's happening right now. Bank bail-ins, same thing. The big banks they just had that March 11th, that loan program just end because the banks started collapsing. A lot of people didn't realize there was a loan program that was set in place for a year. So we thought the banks are doing well, but they were getting loans to keep them alive. And that just ended on March 11th, 2024. So basically the Federal Reserve, they're a private entity, just like you said. They're supposed to control money supply in the job markets, and they can just turn the printing machine on full blast whenever they want to. The problem with this is we are now kicked the can down the road so far. We are now, and you see Jerome Powell now blaming Congress. He's like, hey, and he said, just so everybody listening to this is from the head of the Fed. He said, this is unsustainable. That's his words. This is the head of the Federal Reserve. He said, America's on an unsustainable path. And all that stuff, if you guys have listened to this podcast, re-listen to the beginning of this, what we talk about, what money is and where you need to get to on the side of the quadrant, because that's what money is debt. You can't keep adding. We're at 34 trillion debt. If we keep doing this in 10 years, we'll be at 100 trillion in debt. It doesn't make any sense. So the Federal Reserve, basically, Creature of Jekyll Island. I highly recommend everybody read it. When you understand what money actually is, it's fugazi, it's fake. 1971, we detached from the gold standard. They said they're protecting us from speculators. They didn't have our money. They didn't have our gold, dude. People were trying to convert their gold or get their money back to gold. And they're like, we don't have their money. Holy shit. So they detached us from the gold standard. And this is another part of this. 1974, we went into what's called the petrodollar. Okay, this is really important for Americans to listen to. 1974, they're like, wait a minute, we're going to lose control of this monetary system. They're going to realize that the money's fake. We're going to lose control of our reserve currency, because in 1942, after World War II, we became the reserve currency after World War II. And now I'll go into World War III in just a second. So basically, we went into the petrodollar. The petrodollar was to encourage the Saudis to trade all oil in US dollars, which made us the most powerful currency in the world. Well, the BRICS, Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, came together in 2009 after the biggest housing collapse in America in human history. Basically, they were like, dude, who is monitoring the banks there? Like, there's no regulation. So they're like, you guys are dominating our currencies, fucking up our monetary system, but you can't even manage. So BRICS came together, and they've been working to de-dollarize. So BRICS came together in 2009. Their whole mission was, and Bitcoin's inception was in 2009 too, which is weird. From that point on, there's been a coalition to break free from the American dollar, right? So then we come to 2020, the whole world shuts down, right? They turn the printing machine on full blast, which put us in this position of 34 trillion. Money just gets completely devalued, right? You have low interest rates and money printing. So now your money, everything goes into inflation because everybody's buying all this shit, and then they shut it down, raise interest rates, and then the bond yield inverted in 2023, which sucked the liquidity out of the banks. So now you have a system where the banks are all broke. They don't have their liquidity. There's no liquidity. To make the system work, people have to borrow. But I don't know about you guys, but I see people struggling to pay for gas. Like, people are not able to survive anymore. Like, yeah, it's like rent went up 27% in Arizona. So we're at this tipping point now where the feds are balancing interest rates. So Jerome Powell was supposed to lower interest rates 3 times this year. He hasn't done it the first time. He's not going to do it the second time. What's going to happen is, if you're an investor in crypto, he's going to lower interest rates before the presidential election, because they don't work for the president, but they do. He's going to lower interest rates, and your assets are going to go straight up. And that's your opportunity, people, to pull profits and get on the right side of the quadrant. So yeah, the Federal Reserve, and I don't know, it might change. The system might change. I predict that we're going to go into an even playing field. It's going to be, America will no longer be the dominant currency in the next 10 years. It'll be a G7, the BRICS, and they'll have a bag of currencies. They'll regulate them it'll be more of an even playing field, right? An even monetary system. And then it'll be, hey, who's the best? And I think that's the way it should be. Who puts out the best products, who has the best imports, exports, right? Who's running the best businesses, instead of, hey, listen, we're the dominant currency, F you, we don't care about your economy. So I'm proud to be an American, though, but I've built businesses here. But I think Americans need to wake up that money is changing big time.
For sure. And you mentioned, crypto, we talk a lot about crypto in our community, and, it's digital currency. We're not trying to sell you on crypto, but it is part of the evolution, right? And one company that we talk about within our community a lot is Ripple, XRP. And you had the amazing pleasure of being filmed for a new documentary that's going to be on Netflix called XRP Unleashed. Tell us a little bit about the experience, and I'll play the trailer here, so that way everybody can see it. So I have it ready. I'll play the trailer, and then I'll get your thoughts. Your thoughts on it. Hold on.
An honor, man. Thank you.
Bringing it online. Here we are.
Fired up. Brought a lawsuit against Chris Larson, the co-founder of Ripple. They brought a lawsuit against me. They brought a lawsuit against Ripple. This wasn't just an attack on Ripple, it was an attack on the entire crypto industry.
Or otherwise known as XRP, just won in their case against the SEC.
So what is XRP? XRP is the GOAT.
I would say that XRP, in essence, is a faster payments settlement software.
I can just pass you my currency to your currency, from maybe the US dollar over to the yuan, in seconds for very, very, very low cost.
Crypto as a whole is like the last step in the process of making everything digital.
And now that it's been deemed, not a security, the only cryptocurrency with regulatory clarity, it's a great time to be a part of the XRP Army.
What is the XRP Army? How do you get involved with that?
The XRP Army is a revolution.
I'm going to show you in today's video what the FDIC.
One look at what the Bank of International Settlements just released yesterday.
Pushing the envelope for change.
We're going to ride from the ashes. We assemble an army. so that we can be at the forefront of this change.
You're going to see a massive, massive shift.
If you don't adopt, you will get left behind.
Wow.
Cool, man. Yeah. It was cool, man. It's a really neat thing. It's like this this documentary is gonna be pretty powerful. I just got to see the trailer for it, the actual trailer for it, and it's grassroots all the way up to the top of the house, man. And it's a historical documentary around a change in a financial system and the public waking up to this new monetary system, and the fact that the public no longer it's historical, man. How do I say this? Like, the public is getting tired of not understanding how this system works, and they want to have sovereignty of their own wealth, and it's a transfer in money, and that's what it is. And that's what the documentary is all about. It's all the way from grassroots all the way to the people who, the technical people. John DIDN's in there, where the lawyer that's going against the SEC and all these things. And it's just an interesting dynamic. And it was an honor to be part of it. It's like a really interesting. They're going to be at our conference, man. So don't. I just put it out on the podcast.
If you guys want some entertainment, I'll be happy to come and do 30 minutes. Let's go.
Love it. They're going to be at I just put it out public. That's fine. But they're going to be at the conference, and then they're going to be filming there, and then also in XRP Las Vegas as well, which is amazing. And so it's going to be a continual thing, which is, I believe is going to be like a docuseries, which would be pretty cool. So,
man.
Badass, man. Badass. Well, Danny, you have anything else you want to add before we let
I learned
John
a couple
go?
of things. I learned a couple of things today. I learned that I got to invest more in crypto, which Jose has been trying to harping my ear on.
Yeah.
Not buy a new car, even though I am in sore need of one. And just keep believing in Yeshua, trust him.
Right. That's right.
Trust him. Nah, man, this was an awesome conversation. I had a bunch of fun. Again, man, this has been amazing, dude. I will continue to pray for your success and your influence on this world, because people like you and people that espouse that train of thought, I think, are more important now than ever.
Thank you.
Everybody wants to say, everybody wants to have a voice, but what are they talking about, right? Like, you're speaking some truths to light, and it's amazing to watch, my friend.
Thank you, man. Thank you, Daniel. Appreciate that.
John, we really appreciate you being on the show today. And as always, guys, make sure you follow Coach JV on Twitter, and make sure there's a bunch of fake accounts. So make sure you follow the right one. Here it is, Coach JV _. Okay. It's Coach JV _ on Twitter, and follow the 3T Warrior Academy on YouTube. Over 148,000 subscribers. It is a verified account. They have a daily show, the Good Morning Crypto Show, and daily videos with Coach JV, breaking down everything that's going on economically, globally, domestically, and internationally. It's free content, guys, free content that you can get started with. And if you want to join the private academy, I'll have the link in the description as well, so you guys can join the 3T Warrior Academy and get your shit together as we go through this shift, right?
Yes.
Looks like I'm gonna have to join. Guys, join. I'm joining. Guys, join, because I'm joining. That's it. I'm convinced. We're good.
I just want to give you guys a shout out. Like, this podcast is great, man. This is a great format, man. It's gonna be huge. Like, it is huge. It's massive. Like, I'm so honored. Like you said, I'm honored to be one of the early ones before this thing is massive. So
no,
I love it.
Here's the thing, like I tell Jose, it's already there. It's just it's slowly people are gonna start realizing. Next thing you know, Joe Rogan's not gonna knock on my door. It's like, yo, D, what happened? I thought you was a comic. And Jose, who is this Jose guy? And then we're gonna be like, hey, Rogan, we told you about us years ago. You just didn't believe us. It's all good. You know what I'm saying?
It's all good.
Guys, as always, make sure you follow us on all of our social media, on YouTube, on Rumble, at Cultura Truth Project. Make sure you follow also the Facebook and Instagram at Gonzalez Media TV. Subscribe to the podcast on all major platforms: Spotify, Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Google Podcasts, and leave us a 5-star review. So with that being said, we thank all of you. Much hugs, much love to everyone. And we're out of here. No fuimos.